Someone pointed out that my story is a revision rather than a rewrite. They might be correct, but I think it's important to point out the structure that I'm aiming for. The story arcs in canon are things like introduction, missions, tuning exams, more missions and learning new techniques, climax. My story is entirely structured in the same vein as canon. We've already done the introduction, and we're currently in the missions segment. Masashi Kishimoto made it clear that he wanted to put more missions in, but his editor advised against it. This, in combination with my focus on more characters, will make the mission segment, for example, longer. But while I don't want my writing to be predictable, you can reliably determine that after I do a few missions, the tuning exams will begin. And furthermore, after I finish the tuning exams, there will be another mission or two where exciting techniques are learned. Just like how canon was structured, I am telling this story. Just how in canon, the major villain of part 1, Orochimaru in that case, didn't bare his fangs until midway through the tuning exams. So it is a loose rewrite because things like the Akatsuki still exist, I just haven't gotten there yet. Every villain you can think of from canon exists in my story too, and while some characters like Orochimaru in my version isn't an enemy, he's not exactly easy to get along with. Of course, in case you've forgotten from my first episode, some characters like Obito, who are villains in canon, are actually just deceased. I'm trying to retain everyone's personalities, even if the teams they're playing for has changed in my version. I also only say trying to retain personalities because none of us really know how Minato would mature in a constantly war-torn world, and as a widower no less. So the arc where Naruto and Jiraiya find Tsunade in canon could just be considered as another mission. Anyway, enough rambling, let's get into today's hijinks. Let's go back to just before the explosion, and instead of Asuma's perspective, we're back with Kakashi and Genma. Genma sighs and grimaces at Tsunade's instructions. After his explanation of the Hanabi accusations, he gives Kakashi an uneasy look before giving the hand signal for the Leaf Shinobi to stand down. Relaxing, Neji's deactivated his Byakugan and Sasuke's putting some kunai back into his kit. All three genin are suddenly blinded by their proximity to the explosion, and Kakashi's lightning reflex shields them from the physical portion of the blast. Ears ringing and still partially blind from the explosion's flash, Sasuke tries to get up, but someone's foot is on his chest, keeping him down. Even from his compromised position and his senses overloaded, Sasuke still has the wherewithal to pull out a kunai and stab it into the offender's leg. He feels like he can hear an echo of Kakashi's voice nearby, but when he looks around, his vision just smears and he can't make out where he is or what's happening. Someone's arm goes across his shoulders and he hears Shikamaru's voice dully and unintelligible. Soon his vision clears up and he realizes they're in a haze of smoke, dust, and debris. There's rubble at his feet, explaining why Shikamaru's got an arm around him to guide. It feels like slow motion for him when a stone ninja lands in front of them. The man's feet plant down and his whole body squishes down from the recoil of landing. The man pulls 2 shuriken from his pack with one hand and throws them at Sasuke and Shikamaru. Kunai still in hand, Sasuke instinctively pushes Shikamaru away and deflects both shuriken. He tries charging the man, but it feels like he too is moving slow. The man attempts to leap backwards away from Sasuke, but he directs his kunai into the man's foot that's last to leave the ground. His attempted retreat stymied, the stone ninja reverts to taijutsu, but Sasuke's already inside his guard. It's just a few more clever twists and hooks before Sasuke's got the man in a submission hold, choking him out. Even the incomplete Sharingan of an Uchiha is on a whole other level, Kakashi remarks, adjusting the headband above his own inherited Sharingan. Realizing that his hearing's returned, Sasuke notices the cacophony of fighting all around them. He was so zeroed in on fighting the man that he had no idea anything else was even happening. Kakashi tells the team that they need to move out. Genma's the Jonin in charge, and instructions are to follow to other teams fighting along the border. They are to relay that stopping an outbreak of war is still the most desired outcome. Meanwhile, Shino alerts Kurenai to the fire that suddenly erupted on the stone side of the border. Following protocol, Kurenai fires a yellow flare to alert Leaf Ninja of the fire hazard. The flash of the explosion disorients the whole group, even Kurenai. However, she recovers first, and as a stone ninja descends to attack her Genin, she's distracted away from the group to defend them. Choji wakes to find his bag of chips torn apart and splayed across the ground. Grimacing at the lost flavor potential, he's knocked loose from his daze when he realizes Sakura and Shino are also knocked down. While he's trying to raise Sakura to her feet, the body of a leaf shinobi falls in front of him. Rushing to the ninja's side, Choji unzips the man's vest to apply first aid. The ninja has shallow breathing and seems to be drifting in and out of consciousness. The man has puncture wounds across his chest and is bleeding profusely. But Choji remains focused and centers himself as he begins performing medical ninjutsu on the fallen shinobi. For every wound he closes, it seems like more blood is gushing out from the man's other wounds. Flustered, Choji tries to switch to a different wound when the medical ninjutsu dissipates, and he realizes his fists are clenched. Making wordless sounds of frustration, Choji leans back and watches in horror as the man dies in front of him. A sudden yelp from Sakura turns Choji's attention to the stone ninja who has her in his grip. Harnessing his sorrow in a laser focus for good, Choji expands his right hand and grips the man's entire torso, disconnecting him from Sakura and thrusting him away. As his hand shrinks back down, Choji forms the necessary seals to throw a fireball, and though the ninja bats it aside, Choji had used the distraction to throw a flurry of shuriken. As his foe is forced to dodge further away, Choji looks back to make sure Shino's up before ditching the fight, grabbing his fellow Genin, and fleeing. Almost if she were in denial, Sakura's fussing over the broken flute that she had only just received from Kurenai. Either from the blast itself or how they fell over, it ended up in pieces. Shino is recovering too slowly, wincing as explosions and shuriken whiz overhead, slowing their flight. Looking around for the missing Kurenai, Choji decides the further from conflict they are, the safer they'll be, but the stone ninja catches up to the disconcerted group. Keeping Shino and Sakura behind him, Choji looks around, desperate for help. Grabbing his hand, Shino shakes his head and tells him he's not alone, apologizing for the slow recovery. He tells Choji that he'll support, releasing a swarm of bugs from his right sleeve. Bolstered, Choji charges again, even as Shino's shuriken fly past him to keep the other ninja second-guessing. With the constant shuriken and kunai from Shino, the much more experienced ninja isn't nearly as capable of defeating Choji as before. Choji's charge begins to succeed as their opponent takes several steps backward. As the man puts a hand up to block Choji's attack, he seemingly misjudges the incoming fist and it crunches him in the jaw. Staggered and reeling, the ninja attempts at last to flee, and while Choji is merciful enough to let him go, the man simply collapses to the ground. Several hundred bugs crawl out from under his clothes, finished feasting on his chakra. Turning to celebrate the victory with Shino, Choji's cheering gets caught in his throat as 3 further ninja land between Sakura and Shino and Choji. As they sneer at the Genin overwhelmed, an explosive shuriken lands in front of them, and its blast immerses them in a cloud of dust. The dust settles in just a few minutes, and Team Asuma stand over the defeated ninja. Naruto has his foot over one of the fallen ninja, claiming the victory as his own, before Asuma pulls him off the man's body with a grunt of disapproval. Even in war, he wants the Genin to respect their foes. Inviting Kurenai's Genin in close, he tells them all to stick together and no harm will befall them. As the solace offered by Asuma settles over him, Choji breaks down a little bit, reliving the moment with the fallen ninja. While Team Asuma were approaching the disturbance, Asuma told them to be extra careful and especially diligent. This was no longer a mission that was ascribed to them based on their skill level. Death was a very real possibility, and he would not tolerate any of them relaxing even a little bit once they arrived. Byakugan on full display, Hinata shouts the direction of Kurenai to Asuma, who thanks her for the tip. He tells Sakura to create her best genjutsu to hide them while he goes to help Kurenai. Still disappointed that her flute broke, Sakura dutifully follows instructions and creates a simple but multi-layered genjutsu. If one's dispelled, there'll still be more to deceive. Seemingly impressed by the illusion, Asuma vanishes as he seeks out Kurenai. Huddled together, Naruto nonchalantly asks the group how exciting it is so far. This earns nothing but silent admonishment from Shino as he consoles Choji. Sakura, on the other hand, is just ignoring him completely as she focuses on the task of maintaining the Genjutsu. Naruto turns to Tenten and Hinata and tells them that if another stone ninja appears, they can hide behind him because he can take him on alone. Tenten sighs and shakes her head, remarking that he's a fool if he seriously thinks that. Hinata struggles in silence. She wants to support Naruto, but he definitely just said something ridiculous. Shino remarks that Choji courageously took on a ninja by himself, but he and Naruto are made of a different cloth. Angered by the insult, Naruto tries to argue with him, but Sakura butts in and asks Naruto if he realizes at all that there's a huge battle happening around him. Falling silent, he just grumbles to himself as he looks out at the clashing ninja. Hinata yelps a little bit as she sees Kurenai coming in close with Asuma helping her. Her leg is bleeding, and she's limping as a result of it, but she otherwise seems fine. As they come to the illusion, Asuma helps her sit down and tasks Choji and Sakura with first aid. He tells Shino, Tenten, and Naruto to stand and defend their position as Sakura's illusion dissipates, and for Hinata to call out any incoming assaults. Back to Team Kakashi, though they've been relaying the orders where they can, Neji has pulled their attention to behind enemy lines. He tells them that at the heart of the fire there seems to be 3 leaf shinobi stuck in hostile territory and fighting. This gives Kakashi pause. If not for the Byakugan, no one would even know that there were friendlies in danger. In the chaos of the fighting, it would also be especially difficult to gather some yet uninjured Jonin who could make such a rescue attempt. Though, after Neji's observance that there were no further ninja hiding in the trees, Kakashi entertains the dangerous thought of a skirmish past the front line. It would likely see far more success even with just one more Jonin to assist, but there wasn't a single leaf shinobi not in the clash. Growling, Kakashi looks at his genin, who are all fine except for maybe Sasuke after his first scrap. He asks Neji if all 3 are certainly Leaf Ninja, and Neji confirms, adding that they appear to have previously been trapped in a cage. If they could get through the battlefield unscathed, then Kakashi would follow through. However, if on the way any of the group get injured, he'd select for a retreat. He communicates this to his team and makes sure they're up for the excursion. Shikamaru remarks that it's ironically in their best interest to make their dash near to a fight. If the Stone Ninja are trying to stay alive against a Leaf Shinobi, they might not pay any mind to 3 genin and even Kakashi could transform himself to look like a kid. On one hand, they'd be easy picking for any Stone Ninja. On the other hand, perhaps they'd be such a low threat that the Stone Ninja would just ignore them and assume they'd be defeated by other means. Kakashi nods at Shikamaru's advice and transforms himself into basically what he looked like as a kid. Shikamaru also thinks that Sasuke should lead so that the Jonin in hiding is further hidden in the group. With no argument from anyone, they proceed as planned. The distance between the leaf side of the battlefield and the stone side is negligible. Technically, they could dart across it at max speed in seconds, but that would certainly draw the attention of any stone ninja with time to spare. Traveling slowly and not even in a straight line, they'd appear as clueless genin, in over their neck in the midst of a battle. Perhaps they'd be mistaken as the inexperienced in shock. After Sasuke's initial experience and Shikamaru seemingly keeping a level head in the situation, Kakashi's rather impressed that they're staying on task. Neji is mostly silent as his unmoving Byakugan sees absolutely everything that's happening all at once. But he has honed himself for this exact use of the Byakugan, and Kakashi doesn't foresee him being overwhelmed by his use of it. As Shikamaru predicted, they make it into the enemy lines shockingly easily. In fact, it was so smooth that Kakashi wonders if anyone's following them. Nevertheless, as they pass into the ever-devouring fire beneath the tree's canopy, they turn their meandering into a full-on sprint as Neji leads them to the heart of the fire. The blaze gets more and more intense the deeper they go, until the floor is essentially lava. Neji performs an earth technique that chucks several dirt balls to smother the most immediately threatening fire. As they reach the core of the blast, Kakashi disappointingly discovers the bodies of 2 of the Leaf Shinobi. Neji apologizes. They had certainly been fighting before, but as he began focusing more on the fire, he didn't realize they had fallen. Kakashi tells him to stay focused and look for the 3rd Shinobi. Neji points in the direction that the 3rd is still fighting, and it takes seconds for Kakashi to spot the man fighting unarmed against 3 stone ninja, who seem to be playing with him. He asks if any other stone ninja are nearby, and the second Neji says no, Kakashi takes off ahead of them to save their fellow Leaf Shinobi. Catching up, Kakashi takes control of the match, distracting all 3 ninja away from the lone injured ninja. Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Neji come to the ninja's side, and Shikamaru recognizes him as Hayate Gekko. As Neji sets to first aid, Sasuke turns to Kakashi and leaps in to help, distracting one of the ninja away from the copycat ninja. Hayate tells Neji and Shikamaru that he had been imprisoned for nearly a week and had been starved to the point of profound weakness. Taking the cue, Shikamaru pulls some food from his pack and lets Hayate have it. The stone ninja has no time for Sasuke as he summons a giant rolling boulder that bounces between several trees as Sasuke tries to jump out of its way. One of the 4 Tomo in Sasuke's eyes spins 1 revolution as he copies the jutsu. Trying it immediately, Sasuke only has to perform the last hand seal in the jutsu to conjure a boulder of his own, except he closes the distance so that the ninja can't dodge it. As the stone ninja is flattened by the boulder, Sasuke smirks at the success and turns to see Kakashi finishing off the other 2 ninja. Fleeing west, away from the fire and further into grass territory, Hayate explains to them what he and his allies were doing. They'd been given a special task to liberate a village in the land of grass that the stone ninja had forcefully occupied. Since the grass was technically a neutral territory, Hayate and the other 2 were given orders straight from the Hokage to free the village from its jailers. The village in question is relatively nearby and lightly guarded. Kakashi asks why they were in the war-torn side of the land of grass. Hayate reveals that had they simply come over from the land of fire, the stone ninja would most certainly have reacted aggressively. So they took a gamble to approach from a different side and it simply did not pay off. Luckily, the stone ninja were unable to glean from any of them what their objective was. Glancing uneasily at the 3 genin, Hayate asks Kakashi if there are any nearby allies that can help him to complete his mission. Neji answers that he can see Hinata on the other side of the border with the rest of Team Asuma and Team Kurenai. If he can get her attention, he might be able to signal for some of them to come over. When Hayate hears Asuma's name, he perks up and tells them that would be enough. Though Kakashi tells him not to underestimate his genin, Hayate dismissively tells Kakashi that they're not here to play at teaching genin. If the Land of Stone gains control of the Land of Grass, they'll have a worst case scenario on their hands. And we've reached the end of today's episode! We'll be concluding this conflict in the next video on Monday. Some of you will have noticed that Team Guy didn't take any part in this one. Well, they're very far away compared to where Asuma and his team were. Perhaps my greatest insecurity in these more action-oriented episodes is whether everyone's able to follow my version of action. Please let me know if it wasn't too confusing, or ideally, just easy to follow. I'm also getting into the busy season at work, so there might be some weeks where I can only push 1 episode. But I'll strive to make that one a little bit bigger. Heck, while writing this episode, I've just come home from a 12-hour shift, so it could get pretty crazy. Speaking of crazy, next video is going to be so fun. Not that the rest of these haven't been fun. You'll get what I mean. Until then, the sky's the limit.